It is no secret that our borders are wide open to anyone who wants to come. We saw this on a large scale last summer when tens of thousands of Central American women and teenagers brazenly crossed the border into Texas and turned themselves into Border Patrol agents, knowing they would be set free in our communities. And this wave of illegals from Central America continues today, even though President Obama promised to stop it by deporting those who came swiftly back to their home countries. Instead of being removed, well over 80% of those who came last summer are still in the United States. Many will remain permanently, and many, many more will come because they know they will not be sent home, at least not by this administration. We saw our porous borders on a smaller scale less than a month ago when a beautiful young woman named Kate Steinle was gunned down by an illegal alien, 7-time felon, who had been deported 5 times, but returned again and again to continue his crime spree. Had our borders been secure, Kate and hundreds of others would still be alive today. There is no question that foreigners who pose a threat to American lives, including terrorists, can and have used our open borders to gain entry into the United States. In fact, last year alone, the Border Patrol apprehended 474 so-called special interest aliens, or those from countries linked to terrorism, including Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Yemen. And the Border Patrol estimates that it apprehends, at best, 1 in 3 illegal entrants. That's almost 1,000 illegal entrants from countries that sponsor or tolerate terrorism in a single year. Remember, it took only 19 terrorists to bring down the World Trade Center towers on 9/11. You have to wonder how someone from Yemen, one of the poorest countries in the world, finds the money to travel to Mexico and hire a smuggler to bring him across the border. The obvious answer is that he's being funded by a terrorist organization. But the question too few people are asking is, why go to all the trouble of sneaking across the border illegally if you can instead come legally with access to all the documents you need to remain in the United States while you plan your attack? The murder of 4 United States Marines in Chattanooga, Tennessee by a jihadi who immigrated to the United States legally with his parents brought home to all of us yet again the tragic consequences of an out-of-control immigration system. It should be obvious to all that the United States fails to properly vet the immigrants we allow into our country. Whether it's terrorists or dangerous criminals, applications are rubber-stamped and Americans pay the price. We know that terrorists have used virtually every part of our immigration system to gain entry. Omar Abdel Rahman, the blind sheikh in prison for planning the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, came on a tourist visa even though he was on the terrorist watch list and then applied for asylum. Mahmoud Abu Halima, one of the terrorists who actually bombed the World Trade Center in 1993, was granted amnesty as an agricultural worker under the 1986 amnesty, even though he was a cab driver in New York City. The 9/11 hijackers came on tourist and student visas, and some of them overstayed those visas and remained here illegally. Hesham Mohammed Hadayet, the Egyptian who opened fire at the El Al counter at Los Angeles Airport in 2002, was a visa lottery winner. The Boston bombers were brought to the United States as refugees, as were the 2 bomb-making members of Al-Qaeda in Iraq who were arrested in Bowling Green, Kentucky in 2009. The Moroccan arrested in Connecticut last year for planning to use a remote-control plane to bomb a federal building and a university came on a student visa and then applied for asylum. An Uzbek refugee living in Idaho was arrested and charged with providing support to a terrorist organization in the form of teaching terror recruits how to build bombs. His trial started last week. Most of the so-called homegrown jihadists who've left the United States to fight with the Islamic State in Syria and al-Shabaab in Somalia, in fact, were brought to the United States as refugees or are the relatives of refugees, not exactly homegrown. The State Department is currently under pressure from the United Nations to resettle tens of thousands of Syrian refugees here over the next few years. But the FBI has already testified to Congress that we have absolutely no way to tell if any of these Syrians has direct ties or loyalty to the Islamic State or the al-Nusra Front. We do know, however, that the Islamic State has announced that it is seeding Syrian refugee camps with ISIS fighters. Part of the problem is inherent with immigration from countries where a large portion of the population hates America. Even the best vetting system cannot probe the minds and hearts of would-be immigrants. Another big part of the problem is the sheer numbers of applicants the government processes. From 1776 to 1965, average annual legal immigration was below 250,000. Thanks to changes made by Congress in the 1965 Immigration Act, annual legal immigration has surged to about 1.2 million, almost 5 times our historic level. The result is that we now have more than 40 million foreign-born people living in the U.S. As it turns out, in most ways, immigrants are just like everyone else. Some are good and some are not. Some come to become Americans and give their families a better life, and some come to commit crimes or to destroy America. It is increasingly important that we figure out a way to tell the difference. After all, a terrorist or criminal who cannot enter the United States also cannot commit terrorist acts or crimes on our soil. Immigration policy, like every other public policy, should be set according to what is in the national interest. That means our interest. We need to start by recognizing that radical Islamists really do hate us, and they actually want to kill us. We have no obligation to admit immigrants who want us dead. And we are fools to continue doing so. We also need to reduce the overall numbers. A vetting process that could be successful at weeding criminals and terrorists out of a population of 100,000 is less likely to be successful at weeding the bad apples out of a population of 1 million. Finally, we need to return to our foundations. We should admit immigrants who can contribute to our nation, who want to be part of our social fabric, and who believe in our form of government. We must protect our sovereignty by securing our borders, and we must enforce all our laws fairly and equally, including our immigration laws.